fountain of guidance and the ship to salvation, and the ship to salvation. إن الحسين مصباح الهدى وسفينة النجاة.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to our dear brothers and sisters from all over the globe, and thank you for joining us on Lantern of Light's Muharram Summit titled Wisdom Behind Grief through Karbala, with me your host Sakeena Habib. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah wa ala al-arwah allati hallat bifinaik. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم أجمعين. Lantern of Light extends its deepest condolences on the martyrdom of the Master of Martyrs, Aba Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. We offer condolences to the Imam of our time, Ajalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, on the tragedies that befell in Karbala on the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. I would like to thank you all for joining us in this divinely Husseini banquet. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all infinitely. There is no day like your day, Ya Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. This Ashura Muharram 2024, we are incredibly blessed to launch a special campaign that marks not only the epic tragedy of Karbala and Imam Hussein alayhi salam, but also delves deeper into who is Zainab salamullahi alayha. And alhamdulillah, it is also a significant milestone for Lantern of Light, celebrating 1 year since its charity status. And this month, we will be unpacking positive psychology of suffering and concept of grief, and our dedicated services that has been a lifeline to many young Muslims struggling with identity, Islamophobia, depression, anxiety, and many other mental health issues. And at Lantern of Light, we care with passion in our transformative service that you, as our well-wishers, donors, and supporters, have helped us sustain and grow. So Lantern of Light, as you all know, is a UK registered charity, number 1203567, and it having crossed many hurdles and blessed with beautiful milestones, it is now soaring towards greater heights. In our humble initiatives, we have been able to facilitate several topical issues through podcasts, live programs, and soul transforming cohort workshops and masterclass programs with qualified therapists and Islamic scholars, from our mental health well-being to emotional and spiritual well-being, transforming lives and fostering love and faith. So please do visit our soulful website on www.lanternoflight.co.uk, and please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to our inspirational channel. And also please donate generously for our works to continue blossom by making a donation at Lantern of Light Limited at Santander Bank. So the account details are 634222412, and the sort code is 090129. Inshallah, we hope that you become a Lantern of Light sustainer and donate generously to be part of our amazing volunteering team, inshallah. Now, as the title says it all, we want to discuss about wisdom behind grief through the context of Karbala. And so we will be discussing today about the emotional cycle of grief. What are the stages that one goes through when they grieve, and what does it really mean to go through a loss, but then also find something meaningful and purposeful in it. What is something positive that comes out of it? And inshallah, we will be also connecting it a little more to Karbala, what actually happened on the day of Ashura, and how Imam Hussein alayhi salam really accepted his destiny. And when we say Ya ayyatuhan nafsul mutma'inna, it's like the Quran calls out and says that, oh, the content soul. So how did Imam Hussein alayhi salam find peace and contentment despite seeing all the tragedies that befell in front of him? So, inshallah, on today's discussion, we will be having with us Sister Sarah Gulamhusein, who is a psychologist and trauma therapist who founded a mental health and human rights platform, Sazesh. She's been on with us, through several mental health programs. She's addressed amazing issues on Lantern of Light, and we all know that. Her current campaign involves also understanding children's rights and developments, and she deals with several clients in helping them understand and navigate their emotions, trauma, and mental health. So, inshallah, today we'll be talking about the emotional cycle of grief with her and the entire process. I would like to welcome dear sister Sarah Gulam Hussein with us.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, sister Sarah. How are you? How is everything?
Alaikum salam. I'm so good. Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much for having me on this program.
Thank you so much, Sister Sarah, for your precious time. And I would like to offer my condolences to you during this Ayam Azai, the month of Muharram. And I pray, inshallah, may Allah accept all your du'as and our azadari, inshallah.
Ameen. Ameen.
I mean, so, Sister Sarah, let's talk about the grieving cycle, the emotional cycle. So I want to start off by asking you that what are the emotions associated with each stage of grief, and how do we identify them?
So, psychologically, I think I have spoken about this before, but I'll take you through the grief cycle again just to kind of refresh. So, psychologically, there are 5 stages of grief. And each stage has its own emotions, very specific emotions. But because we're all different human beings, we're all unique, we're able to kind of experience them all very differently. So even though I'm going through the stages, bear in mind that you will not go through it one after another. It'll all be jumbled up for everyone because we're all different. So the first stage is kind of shock, right? Because
Mhm.
most of the time you don't expect your loved one to pass away, or maybe you expect it, but still when it actually happens, you're going through things that you don't really expect. So there's a bit of shock, denial, disbelief. You may be feeling a bit guilty, like I could have done more, I could have spent more time with my loved one, I could have
Right.
done this, that, like what if. So you have all this guilt, and that's
Yeah.
kind of involved in the first stage. And then the second stage is very, very difficult. It's usually to do with intense emotions. So the intense emotions that we experience is intense anger. And this can come with frustration. This can come with, jealousy. When you see other people with their loved ones, you say, oh, I don't have that. I've
Yeah.
lost that. So you're constantly comparing. So there's that jealousy and envy, anguish. You're a bit disorganized. So there's those kind of strong emotions associated with anger. And then on the
Right.
other side, you also have strong emotions associated with sadness, right? So intense sadness, yearning, and you have all of this, melancholy, nostalgia. And you can feel really overwhelmed with all these emotions because sadness and anger are two very strong emotions. A lot of people think sadness is not strong, but it's very strong. It can take a lot from you. And so that's kind of the second stage of grief. And although you feel sadness throughout, but specifically it does come when you're feeling angry, right? Or you kind of manifest it as anger. And then the third stage is what we call depression. And depression, again, you have that sadness, that yearning, but you just feel very tired, lethargy, fatigue. You don't know what to do. You don't have energy to get out of bed in the morning. You don't have energy to eat, to talk to people. Anytime anyone asks you, let's meet up for coffee. No, no.
Yeah.
I don't have energy to do that, right? Maybe next time. Or if you need
Yeah.
to go to the mosque, we're constantly going to the mosque for a Jummah program, or in Muharram every day. When you're depressed, you don't feel like going to the mosque. You're like putting on clothes, my scarf, going and sitting there, saying salam to everyone. You don't have energy for this day-to-day things,
Very
right? So
true.
that's kind of the depression stage. And then you have the bargaining stage. And the bargaining stage is, I'll tell you a bit about the bargaining stage. It's when we're trying to say, oh, what if this happened instead? Or what if I did this? What if I went and changed this? So you have all these scenarios and you're kind of bargaining. You're telling Allah, no, let me see my loved one again. I'll do anything. I'll do this, that, and the other. So you're kind of in this very shifting kind of frame of mind where you're constantly moving back and forth and back and forth. You're reliving what happened to your loved one, how they died, what was your role in it, what was everyone's role in it. And that can be very emotional because, one, you're experiencing a lot of stress and anxiety, right? You're stressing yourself out because you're trying to think of all the scenarios that never happened, right?
Right.
And then you're going through, you're having intrusive thoughts. What if, what if, what if? Or what if I had done this? Or what if this had happened like that? So all these what if questions, these intrusive thoughts, they really take you round and round. They make you feel very overwhelmed. And
Right.
you have that hopelessness, that fear, like, oh my god, what if it's my fault? So again, the guilt and regret. So there are loads of emotions kind of associated with the whole process of grief. Now the final
Yes.
stage of grief, which is the fifth stage of grief, is to
Yes.
do with acceptance. And it takes a long time for you to actually get there, because that's where you experience those positive emotions like hope, acceptance, love, understanding. You kind of have built your resilience, so you're feeling in a very positive frame of mind. But until then, you go through all these different emotions.
Right. Sister Sarah, when you mentioned about how one feels very overwhelmed and, they go through, uh, you know, remembering and those things, those memories, how they play in your head, and, you're having those memories and flashbacks. Um, it's very difficult for a person to, of course, overcome this feeling and this emotion. And if you could just slightly touch upon Karbala, like, what do you how was it like, especially for the women, like when we see, for example, Sayyidah Zainab salamullahi alayha's example, like she witnessed everything. And how when she went back to Medina, and she was so resilient throughout. And uh, even when she saw the rooms of her both sons, right, who had been martyred in Karbala, and she was still so satisfied in her heart. And how do you think was it like for her to process those emotions? I know that, of course, she was a BB and everything. She was a holy personality, but how do you think she must have given us a lesson? Like, what lesson does she give us through her example?
That's a very good question. I think there are two important things here that we need to make note of. The first one is, yes, she was very resilient and she was, the strongest pillar, in Karbala. And even after Karbala, she was the strongest pillar for the fourth Imam as well, you know. But there are so many narrations, even when you go to Majalis, you'll hear people saying that even when she came back, her husband did not recognize her. She had changed. And that's
Right.
what grief does. Grief changes you as a person. It can really take it can take something from you that you never expected. And so you are going to experience that change. And that's what grief is. It's a cycle of change in your life. So even though she was the strongest pillar, she held on to, those Islamic coping mechanisms. She held on to tawakkul. She held on to all these beautiful things that we have as Muslims. But that doesn't mean she didn't suffer. right? And that's
Yes.
the first point I want to make, is that it's possible to suffer. It is possible to go through all these emotions, even as a Muslim, even as a BB, to the point where your loved ones can't even tell you who you are. You know, he asked her, "Who are you?" And she said, I'm your husband. I'm sorry, I'm your wife, right? I'm Zainab. And you know, when you hear that in majalis, it really tugs at you, because grief is, it changed her to such an extent, seeing all of that torture, seeing all of that, you know, astaghfirullah, all the things that happened, kind of seeing that it does change you. And the second
Absolutely.
thing, which I think is really important to note, is that she did not leave the rope of Allah. She did not. She could have at any point taken out her anger at Allah. She could have taken out her frustration. You know, she could have easily just lost her patience and just, you know, vented. But she didn't. She didn't, you know. She made
And I,
sure that she was there for other people, but she also made sure she was there for herself. She looked
yeah.
after herself and kind of, you know, made sure that she's filling her own cup, and then she was there for the fourth imam and for, you know, her husband and the rest of the women that she came back to kind of support the Muslim women at the time. So it's very important to remember that.
Absolutely. And it so strongly connects for us today. Like, it's a strong universal message for us as well today. Like, what we're facing, what we're seeing, what we're witnessing in the world, like the past couple of months, you know, have been very devastating for the entire Muslim Ummah. Whatever happened in, you know, the oppressed countries, we keep hearing it. We keep seeing a lot of footages and images on the media, you know. So, I think the example that you gave, that how Bibi Zainab, you know, held on to that firm belief in Allah and on tawakkul, and she was so resilient throughout. And you know, yes, of course, we everybody has to suffer, but then at the end of the day, how can we process our emotions and, you know, be able to accept it as well? So I think you've put it out very nicely, and all of those things apply very well. My question is that how do you think grief can be a catalyst for post traumatic growth, and what are some common experiences that contribute to this growth, Sister Sarah?
So, firstly, it's important to define post traumatic growth. So, post traumatic growth is when someone is affected by trauma, affected by PTSD. You know, they've gone through something that's very hard, right? It's a big struggle. And post traumatic growth is the growth that comes out of that, when you find new connections and new meanings in things in your life, or how you relate to your life, to the people around you, right? And that can be in any way, emotionally, physically, mentally, or spiritually. Now,
Right.
there are really two things to focus on here, and I'll take you through it very quickly. There are, one is what is involved in post traumatic growth, right? So, post traumatic growth involves a number of things that can kind of make you grow as a person and make you achieve a positive outcome from your suffering. So, the number of things that are involved are two to three. There's interpersonal relationships, your relationships with other people, new possibilities, so kind of seeing things that you wouldn't have ordinarily seen before, personal growth, so that's that inner change that we were talking about, and that involves spiritual change as well, and then learning how to appreciate life in a new way. Okay, so these are the ingredients that you need for post traumatic growth. So, how do we achieve that? And grief really helps us achieve that in a beautiful way. The first way is through emotional regulation. And what do we know about grief? We experience so many emotions during grief. Now, if you're the kind of person who likes to bury these emotions, you're not going to learn how to regulate them. You're not going to learn how to grow through those emotions. But if you're the kind of person who's like, okay, I have all these emotions, I need to deal with them somehow, then what you're doing is you're engaging in post traumatic growth. You're making
Right.
sense of your emotions, you're identifying them, and then you're learning how to regulate them, how to deal with them. What are healthy ways of doing that, and what are the non-healthy ways of doing that? And then the second thing is grief kind of makes us question things that we didn't question before. Like I said, it really takes something out of you that you never expected. So you you kind of learn more about yourself and the world through that grief. And
Right.
that's something called narrative development, which is something that is very important when it comes to post traumatic growth. When you're developing your inner and outer self in
Right.
relation to the world, you're growing post traumatically. Okay. And then the third one is grief kind of makes us um, it, we're more likely to speak about it. It makes us talk, right? When you've gone through something, people come to your house, people ask you, Musk, how are you? Do you need some help? Do you need some support? You know, I'm here for you. So at some point, you are more likely to talk about your grief than you are to talk about any mental health issue. And that's also important disclosure, talking. Talking about your experiences helps you grow from those experiences. If you don't talk about it, you are stagnating, you're getting stuck. So
Very
grief
true.
kind of has these really essential ways of growing through any trauma that we've experienced or through any, loss.
Right. So I think it's very important to communicate and not keep yourself isolated. And most times, like how sometimes people, bottle up their feelings or
For sure.
completely shut themselves down. So that's something that one needs to be concerned about. And I think that is what leads to the concept of azadari and majalises and crying and grieving, being able to express our expressions and emotions for the Imam and the Ahlul Bayt alayhim assalam. Because
Definitely.
when we recite majalises, when we recite lectures, when we recite nohas or marsias very normally. So, this is how they basically expressed their grief and their emotions and let it out and let the world know their story. And that's how the narrators also carried on the legacy of Azadari, and told the world what really happened on the day of Ashura and Karbala.
And
So
that's such an important point because we
yes,
find it shameful to exhibit our emotions. Whenever someone passes away, the first and only thing you hear in that mosque is don't cry, don't cry, wipe your tears. It's going to, you're going to make the deceased naraz, you're going to make them,
yes,
annoyed. Don't cry. But when it comes to Imam Hussein, you're encouraged to cry and take it all out. And it's such a juxtaposition. Like, crying is so healthy for you. It's so healthy. When you're looking at your deceased, your loved one who's passed away, and you cry, each of those tears is taking that emotion away from you. It's lessening your burden. So
right,
the next time you don't know what to say, when you're seeing someone crying and you don't know what to say, don't tell them not to cry,
not to
because
cry.
that's the worst thing you can tell someone who's grieving. You're meant to cry when you're grieving. So just
Right,
remember Imam Hussein, remember what we do for him. We cry for him so we can cry for anyone else too.
right. Sister Sarah, do you think cultural and societal factors influence the grieving process? If they do, how? And what are some of the ways where people can cope with loss? What are some of the ways, if you can quickly just share with us?
Yeah, so the first one is what I said right now. When people, kind of tell you not to cry, don't listen to them. Don't be mean, don't be rude, but don't listen to them. Crying is very, very healthy. Um, Another thing that I think is very cultural is keeping things inside. A lot of us really like to keep our emotions inside. And, I always hear this. Whenever I'm in a social setting, I will always hear people saying, oh, this person is problematic. This person is jagrari. This person has a lot of issues. Don't listen to this auntie. And I say, well, you're saying that, but are you really helping this auntie? Because when they are portraying these behaviors, it's actually symptoms of trauma, symptoms of grief or unresolved grief that they are taking out. That's why you think they're problematic, or you think they're jagrari, but that's not actually true. They're not jagrari. They just don't know, or they haven't had the support to kind of take out their emotions in a very healthy way. So it's all kept inside, and anytime they can get triggered and just say what comes to their mind. So I really, really will encourage everyone to think twice before they label someone, before they tell someone, oh, you're jagrari, you're this, you're that, or don't cry. It's not healthy. Really think about what you're saying and try to keep that supportive environment. And the final thing, which I always say, and I'm going to say it here as well: therapy. Therapy is the one thing, honestly, there are techniques that us counselors have been taught to help you deal with grief so effectively. But if you're not going to the therapy room, you're not getting that help. And I just wanted to quickly share with you that if you look closely at the history of Islam, one of the first mental health hospitals was created in Baghdad, right? So in I think it was 823 age, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that, but do your research. The first mental health hospital was kind of created by Harun Rashid in Baghdad. And the mental health hospital wasn't like how you think it is today. It was in the middle of the town. There was loads of nature and greenery, so there's a lot of ecotherapy they believed in. And their main aim was to reintegrate these people who are struggling back into society. That's why it was in the middle of town. They would invite outsiders in, to have those conversations. They used a lot of holistic treatments. They had medication, so they would prescribe medication if needed. But there was also massage therapy rooms, sauna rooms, there was hijama rooms, there was talking therapy. So this is all in the history of Islam. So when you're trying to tell me that, this is outside of Islam, it's a Western thing, it's not. The first mental health hospital was part of Islamic history and part of our history. So please, 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 please consider talking to a therapist. Right?
Thank you. That was very good. I mean, I didn't know that there was a history back to this. So that's a bonus knowledge that has been added on today's program. And it's true, the way, like, I think, you know, therapy is sort of portrayed is, when people see like mental hospitals and, mental asylums, and, that's the image that they get, that, oh, people are rather being tortured than being treated. But you put it out very nicely, and you've explained that, you know, this was not actually the concept originally.
Yeah.
And, over time, obviously, things have evolved and everything. But there's a good aspect of therapy out there. There are a lot of positives and pros of therapy out there. We just need to do the right research and find the right channels, which is very, very important.
Definitely.
And thank you so much, Sister Sarah, for coming on today's program and for sharing an amazing perspective, honestly, on this topic about the emotional cycle of grief. And it was amazing how you touched some of the key points from Karbala as well. Thank you so much. If there's anything that you would like to add, and then we can wrap the program, inshallah.
I think I would just like to add that a lot of people go to the majalis year in, year out, and they yearn for that connection with Imam Hussein, but it's very hard to find. And I say it's very hard to find based on my personal experience. I used to go to majalis every year, and I would just sit there, watch everyone cry, and say, why are there no tears coming out of my eyes? I can understand it. I understand Urdu and Hindi and Gujarati. I can understand, but why are there no tears coming out of my eyes? And it was something I kept struggling with. But I realized actually the change has to come from inside of you. Once you open your heart to those emotions, then the tears will come out even when you're completely distracted or thinking of anything. No matter what, the moment that majalis starts, you will cry. And that's what I learned, is that you have to take that block out of your heart. And
Yes,
one of the ways that you can do that is through therapy, because that's how I learned how to connect with my emotions. And once I opened that blockage in my heart, alhamdulillah, I was able to connect with the stories of all the martyrs of Karbala. So please consider that emotional regulation is very, very important.
thank you so much, Sister Sarah, once again. And inshallah, we will be seeing you in the future programs as well. Thank you for always
Inshallah.
collaborating with Lantern of Light. Jazakallah khairan.
Anytime.
Thank you so much to